Benayakim, okay, and Lawrence Maribal. Charles, you're up first.
Is this working? Okay.
Yep.
Good afternoon, Chairman Simpson, Ranking Member Pingree, and subcommittee members that are not here. So, my name is Charles Martin, and I am the elected tribal chairman of the Morongo Band of Mission Indians, a federally recognized tribe in Southern California. I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony today. While Morongo provides significant resources to fund our government, it is imperative that Congress never forget our communities and responsibility to tribes to work in strengthening our communities with funding for education, healthcare, and land management. After Congress fully addresses education, healthcare, land management, Morongo would advocate for resources to be directed to the following 4 areas. 1, Indian child welfare. To help stabilize the community and keep Native children connected to tribes, we ask that Congress fund the Indian Child Welfare Act and social services surrounding foster care placements and adoptions. BIA has a number of critical programs supporting these efforts, which are consistent with the recommendations you have received from the National Indian Child Welfare Association. We strongly encourage Congress to fully and robustly fund the following priorities: Indian child welfare protection and family violence prevention grant programs and resource center at $93 million, Indian Child Welfare Act on-reservation grant program via TPA at $30 million, Indian Child Welfare Act off-reservation grant program at $5 million, welfare assistance at $90 million, and social services at $80 million. These programs directly prevent the separation of Indian families and provide assistance for the reunification of families. Second, we would ask that Morongo is a self-governance tribe, either compacting or contracting nearly every aspect of the federal government's services to the tribe. Our tribal priority allocations are critically important funds that allow Morongo to direct BIA resources based on the need with our own government. Unfortunately, TPA funds less than 1% of our governmental budget. This is woefully inadequate. As an example, a few years ago, Morongo received $63,385 in one-time funding to help support our tribal court for a period of 3 years. By comparison, Morongo spent $572,000 in 2022 alone on our tribal court. We encourage Congress to significantly increase the TPA funding available to tribes. Third, Morongo operates our own tribal fire and police departments, both of which frequently respond to emergencies in neighboring cities and unincorporated county areas. This month, we launched a tribal ambulance program to strengthen emergency medical response on the reservation and across the surrounding region. However, we are left largely alone to carry this burden. As the committee knows, California is a Public Law 280 state. The BIA has chosen not to fund police for tribes in Public Law 280 states, concluding that the state, not our tribal government, has primary criminal jurisdiction. Respectfully, that is wrong. If Morongo doesn't provide emergency and public safety services for our citizens and the many visitors to our reservation, no one will. Tribes also need funding for civil matters such as encroachments and trespass issues which are often ignored by the BIA due to a lack of staff or tools to address these matters. As a result, many tribes deal with illegal dumping of household trash and hazardous materials, as well as issues with illegal squatters on tribal land. Morongo appreciates that Congress is already engaged on this issue. We supported language included in the fiscal year 2023 omnibus that seeks to provide funds to tribes the BIA has forgotten. But more is needed. If the BIA won't allocate the money to keep us safe, I ask that Congress mandate them as a set of minimum allocation of $500,000 for every tribe within the BIA public safety line item. Fourth, BIA Realty Services and TAM system modernization. Despite processing the vast majority of realty services requests through our self-governance program, Morongo struggles with significant BIA delays in processing such requests when any assistance is required from the regional office. The problem is compounded by archaic rules that prevent Morongo from accessing the records of other tribes, which we need to do regularly as we provide realty services to 4 other local tribes. These delays impact tribal members who need Section 184 housing, title certified, and our ability to approve business leases. We also would ask that Congress continue to support land management in Indian country by providing funding to support upgrades and maintenance of the trust asset and accounting management system, also known as TAMS. That concludes my remarks. Thank you for your time and attention to these issues. And sir, I would ask that there are 500 federally recognized, over 500 federally recognized tribes. To that end, there's a lot of work, and we are all very, very different. So, yeah, it's one step at a time. It helps immensely.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And that's why we hold these hearings with so many different tribes from around the country. I think 65 witnesses from all around the country, which doesn't cover 574 tribes, obviously. But you're absolutely right that they're all different and have different issues that they're dealing with.
Thank you.
Appreciate your testimony. Joe?
Nice to meet you. Really thankful for the opportunity to come before you all today. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the Hoopa Valley Tribe. We're on the largest reservation in California, and we're probably about 100 miles south of the Oregon border. So we're way up north, probably about an hour from the ocean, a little bit inland. I want to talk a little bit about what exactly the trust responsibility means to the Hoopa Valley Tribe. I think it's important that people remember all that we have given up as Native people to have this trust responsibility and this relationship with the federal government. And many of our ancestors died so that I could be here today to lobby for our people for a better future. And we want to maintain our way of life in Hoopa. We want to be able to fish and hunt and take care of our families in all the same ways that our ancestors did. And we still have a deep, rich connection to our ancestors through our grandparents and through language and through the things we do to fish our rivers and so many things. However, being the largest reservation in California, we only occupy about a fifth of our Aboriginal territory. So many of our gathering grounds have been taken away. Our fish runs have been diminished severely. Central Valley water contractors working with the Bureau of Reclamation have made billions of dollars off of our water for big ag and for electricity. Meanwhile, we're not able to harvest enough salmon. We harvest less than one salmon per tribal member every year now. And so it's really led to a lot of poverty in our community, drug and alcohol abuse. Historically, we never needed help from the federal government. We were very totally self-sufficient on our lands. So being able to have this service and ask you guys to uphold the promises that were made to our people when we sent our kids to the boarding schools and we moved out of the villages and learned English. And we did all these things with the understanding that the government would uphold this trust responsibility and provide so many of the things that are much needed today. And we want to stand on our own 2 feet. We're doing a lot of things. We just started the Section 17 corporation of our own. We have economic development. We have a small lumber mill. We're now selling lumber to Southern California. So we're doing things that will allow us to not be dependent on the federal government. However, we feel that there's a lot of things you guys can still do to help us get there, to get back to where our ancestors were in prosperity, not depending on anybody else but ourselves. And so we're a prayerful people. We still keep a deep connection to our spiritual ways, and so that's important as well. I just want to talk a little bit about law enforcement. So we have a bad missing and murdered Indigenous person issue on our reservation, and some of our tribal members off the reservation as well. A few years ago, the Bureau of Indian Affairs had done a analysis of our police department and determined that we would need 15 officers to fully staff our police department. Of course, resource protection is always important. You get non-tribal members coming onto our lands, poaching our animals and our forest products, cutting down timbers and hauling them out illegally. So being able to have to fund our police department at a level that will protect all the resources, protect the people, prevent MMIP, that's really important. The state of California only has one special agent in charge for all of BIA, and so we've had a really tough time getting their help for missing and murdered. The one person that's out there is just really swamped and behind. So that's a big one. Office of Emergency Services is important as well. You'll see from the documentation that we requested, we need help in that area also. I want to talk a little bit about our Social Services Department. So we have the second highest caseload of ICWA cases in all of California. We have a need of probably 3 to 5 caseworkers. However, we're only able to fund 1 at this time. That would be a helpful area. Our forestry department and our wildland fire department. The allocation of funding that we've been receiving from the BIA has been the same for 24 years. And so as climate change has bared down upon us and the fires have become more frequent, more intense, and the cost to fight those fires has increased with inflation, yet the funding has stayed the same. And so many of our best firefighters have had to take jobs other places. We've had a lot of turnover there because we're not able to pay our firefighters enough. That's a big concern. Also, reimbursements. We have to front a lot of the money that is comes down for the Bureau of Indian Affairs to take care of the trust responsibility. So we have to put a lot of that money up ourselves. And it takes such a long time to be reimbursed by the Bureau, and it really puts us in a bind cash flow-wise. If there's ways we can work with a Pacific Region office or whatever it may be that takes to help us get our reimbursements in a timely manner, that'll be huge. Also want to talk a little bit about our fisheries department. We do a lot of great work there. Again, we're a fishing people, and any support we can have working with the Bureau of Reclamation to strengthen our fishing rights, see our involvement in our co-management of the waterways as a feature, an asset of the Central Valley project instead of an impediment and instead of a barrier. I think that the mindset needs to change in that way with regards to BOR. Also, want to talk a little bit about irrigation. I talked about being self-sufficient, standing on our own 2 feet. We need better food security on our reservation. COVID was a real eye-opener for us. We couldn't get enough food into the valley during that time. And, so we need to be able to produce our own food. Our irrigation system is a very, very poorly aging infrastructure. And we get about $47,000 a year for that, and it doesn't cover it. It doesn't cover the need, and it's been the same amount that we've received since, I believe, the 1980s or 90s. So the amount has never changed on irrigation. Just a couple more things I want to touch on before
Quickly.
I close my comments.
Quickly.
Thank you for your time. The big thing is automatically adjusting for inflation and population in our funding. Again, we've been stagnant for so many years in our funding levels, our housing improvement program through Bureau of Indian Affairs. The cost of everything goes up. The funding stays the same. Same with our education department. We need more tutors, and let's not forget about the debt that our people have paid to get this trust responsibility. We have a great veteran ceremony every year on the reservation. We honor our veterans greatly. We love our veterans, but there's a lot of people that gave their lives before we started joining the U.S. military as well on our lands so that we can have your support today.
Yep.
So we thank you very much for this
Thank you.
opportunity.
I appreciate it. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we've got a lot of people to get through this afternoon, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
For your time.
Mr. Cromwell.
Good afternoon, Chairman Simpson, Ranking Member Pengree, and the members of the subcommittee that will watch this on YouTube, I hope. My name is Benaiah Kim Cromwell. I'm the current chairman of Robinson Rancheria. We are a federally recognized tribe in Northern California, not as far north as my colleague here, but it's an honor also to be here next to California Chairmen Martin and Davis also. I'm here today for a few requests. The Small Tribal Supplement, the Tribal Priority Allocation, or TPA. The TPA supports tribal governments' exercise of tribal sovereignty. They also fund critical programs like law enforcement, child welfare and social services, And since it's been established in 1994, it has never had an increase in its base level funding. So we request that Congress support the current administration to request an increase in base funding from $160,000 to $300,000 for all tribal governments. The tribes have lost over 50% of their purchasing power of the base STS funding, while inflation has continued to drive up the cost in goods. The next request is the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Division to Feed a Trust. Congress does not fund the BIA Feed a Trust office. The tribes do with their TPA funding. So we'd like for consideration the Feed a Trust office be designed, well, it was designed and executed for federally treaty and trust responsibility for tribes, and it should be funded by Congress. And so please fund the BIA Feed a Trust division. Like chairmans before me, I'm very passionate about social service and what we do in our community. Robinson Rancheria is a grantee of one of the largest temporary assistance for needy families, also called TANF. And ours is called CTTP, which stands for California Tribal TANF Partnership. We partner with 19 tribes in Northern California. We cover 19 counties, and so we have a site in each county. So we are running 19 offices across Northern California. And our program is successful, but we do have a few setbacks due to the inaction of Congress. So I just want to mention a few things. TANF was originally enacted in 1996 for poverty-stricken families and children. From 97 to 2016, TANF was funded at $16.6 billion without a single adjustment for inflation. Since its enacted, it has seen a decline of 44.7%, meaning Congress would need to fund TANF at $31.5 billion just to restore the TANF 1996 purchasing power. Also, we'd like to reauthorize and enact a long-term tribal TANF funding. Congress last reauthorized TANF in the Deficit Reduction Act of 2005 and a series of short-term extensions since its expiration in 2010. This is difficult for tribal nations and TANFs and tribal TANFs all over to make informed long decision planning because we're waiting for the next reauthorization. Also, the authorization tribes for 638 contract tribal TANF under ISDEAA. The Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act is the gold standard for supporting the successful transfer of governance from federal government to tribal nations. And we believe that tribal TANF should be eligible, like other federal programs like IHS, to contract via 638 compacts. Also, we'd like to authorize tribal access to TANF contingency fund. So Congress appropriates $608 million annually to TANF contingency funds for the states. These funds are inaccessible to tribes, and we'd like for Congress to allow these tribes to access these funds if they're not utilized by the states. The last thing I want to share is that our program, CTTP, and our partnerships, since the pandemic has started, we've helped assisted 1,000 family members, 1,000 families cases, and 1,500 children on their caseloads. We've also provided $9.6 million in cash aid to those families in those 19 counties, and that's our most vulnerable population in some of the most vulnerable region, like Chairman Davis said. $4.8 million was for supportive services. It's childcare, it's transportation, it's education, it's transportation needs, and in all of our emergencies that we've been having in Northern California. So this money does go to good use, and if we had more because of inflation, we could definitely do more for our families. Lastly, we're celebrating our 20th year of CTTP, and over that 20 years, I'd like to say thank you to all of our staff, the receptionists, the caseworkers. We do 5,300 families assisted in those 20 years, 8,400 children on those caseloads, and that's 32,000 square miles of service across those 19 counties. So for our regional managers who cover those 32,000 miles to get to site, our executive team and our departments that help us out, I'd like to say thank you to them, and as well as the Tribal Council 20 years ago for helping our deserving and underserved Native communities. So thank you for the opportunity today.
You bet. Thank you. Lawrence.
Thank you, Chairman Simpson and members of the subcommittee. My name is Lawrence Maribal, and I'm the Vice President of Operations at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm grateful for the opportunity to present testimony on behalf of the college. IAIA's story is one of perseverance, inspiration, and success spanning over 60 years. Beginning in 1962 as a BIA boarding school teaching Native arts and culture, IAIA became an independent college chartered by the United States Congress in 1986. The college's mission is to empower creativity and leadership in indigenous arts and cultures through higher education, lifelong learning, and community engagement. IAIA is a place where exceptional students, faculty, and staff gather to engage in creating world-class educational opportunities. On the IAIA campus, thoughtful dialogue happens, skills are built, and creativity flows. IAIA is the birthplace of contemporary Native art, and the college is truly a national treasure. IAIA offers 6 bachelor's programs as well as graduate degrees in creative writing, studio arts, and our newest program, an MFA in cultural administration. The college is accredited by the Higher Learning Commission and serves nearly 1,000 students representing 36 states and 91 tribes from across North America. The college is changing the narrative around higher education in many indigenous communities. First-generation degree-seeking students now see college as a real possibility. This is how a generational shift is accomplished, and IAIA is at the forefront of this change. This subcommittee continues to be a valued partner in furthering the mission of the college. The entire college community expresses their sincere gratitude for your strong record of support. IAIA has a rich history of growth and resiliency. To this end, the college works to ensure its long-term sustainability by augmenting its congressional appropriation with other revenue sources, including auxiliary operations, private contributions, and other government funding sources. The college takes an active role in ensuring its viability for generations to come. The college's fiscal year 24 budget request includes a modest increase of $500,000 from the amount enacted in fiscal year 2023. Providing funding at the requested level will assist IAIA in addressing several key priorities. IAIA remains committed to reducing its carbon footprint. To further this effort, the college will introduce electric vehicles to its fleet in fiscal year 24. Additionally, IAIA continues to be challenged by the ongoing effects of inflation on facilities operations. Expenses for utilities, fuel, and building materials have all increased substantially. Although the college is proactive in its efforts to maximize value and solicit competitive bids, prices have risen dramatically across the board. The college is dedicated to recruiting and retaining highly talented faculty and staff. With ongoing challenges still present in the labor market, it is more critical than ever that the college secure the necessary resources to remain competitive in our local market. To this end, IAIA will seek to match the administration's proposed cost of living increase of 5.4%. In addition, the college will continue to sustain its comprehensive portfolio of benefits to protect the health and well-being of all employees. The additional resources included in the fiscal year 24 budget will support these measures. IAIA continues to prioritize investments in cybersecurity. These strategies will be focused on hardware, software, assessment, and employee training. Specifically, the college plans to purchase a new firewall along with conducting a complete security assessment and cybersecurity training for employees. Keeping pace with the increased costs associated with a comprehensive suite of cyber liability insurance coverage is also essential. Student success is always at the forefront at IAIA. The college has been presented with enormous challenges over the past 3 years. Through it all, students, faculty, and staff have persisted and thrived. By rising to any challenge that presents itself, the college ensures that each student is given the opportunity to maximize their potential. This subcommittee is a key partner in this endeavor. To continue this important work, we respectfully request the subcommittee's support of the college's funding request of $13,982,000 in the independent agency's title of your bill. On behalf of the students, faculty, and staff of IAIA, I express gratitude for your consideration and certainly invite you to come visit us on our campus in Santa Fe.
Thank you. I would love to do that. I've been to Santa Fe several times, but I never made it there. And I've wanted to, being someone who loves the arts and paints and all that kind of stuff. So I'll get there eventually. Let me get this straight now. California tribes are different in that some of them have reservations, some of them don't have reservations. Is that right?
That's correct.
You have a reservation?
Reservation, these guys have ranch.
You have a reservation? Rancheria is not a reservation. It's on.
Oh, that one.
Oh, yeah, the answer. Rancheria is not a reservation. They don't have a reservation. Is that right?
No, treaty was not ratified.
Okay. Do you have different, you must have different challenges than
I'm
those
only
that
familiar with our challenges
Yeah,
as
okay.
a tribe. I'm trying not to tackle other people's
Okay,
challenges,
yeah.
but we do because we were terminated, and in that time of being terminated, a lot of our land was taken from
Okay.
from our citizens. So trying
That's
to
how that came
reestablish it,
about.
yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Where's the reservation?
I'm about 15 minutes out of Palm Springs. 15
North?
minutes out of Palm Springs. I'm in Southern California,
North of Palm Springs or?
north of Palm Springs. Yes.
So we're
Said it
close to the
before.
Oregon border. We're far north,
By the
and
Klamath River?
we're close to the Klamath River. We're Trinity River is a tributary of the Klamath River.
Right.
So it's
I know where that
Klamath
is.
Basin. Yeah.
Okay. We used to have a map in here that had all the reservations from across the country so that when people testified, we'd go, okay, that's the place. Yeah.
I think there's 109 or there's 105. I know there's between 105 and 109 federally recognized tribes in California.
Yeah. That's just stunning to me. I mean, we come to Idaho, I think we have 5. And you would think Idaho had a lot more. I mean, it might
Would
be 6,
think.
but, you know.
Yeah.
It's stunning how many California has and how many Washington has that are out along the coast and everything. So, anyway, I appreciate your testimony. Thank you for being here today. We'll certainly take all of this into consideration as we try to write a bill.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Pingree?
Yeah, thank you. I just echo the chair. It's complicated to begin to understand California and all of the
In a
different.
lot of ways.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true, every day of the week. Different challenges, so, and I don't need to repeat all the things that you've already said, but I was curious, you mentioned your tribe and sort of the food security area. Do you already have agricultural programs going on there, or is it just something you're trying to develop?
We have some now. We're just getting started with farmers markets and stuff where small producers are able to bring things to market. Historically, however, in the 1800s and early 1900s, we supplied a lot of agricultural goods to our whole area, to our whole region. And I'm not sure why that went away over time. But in any case, the potential is there. We have the land, we have the water, we just don't have the infrastructure. And startup capital is another concern for us. It's not easy for tribal people to get business loans, as you might know. You know, when you have trust land, there's no way to use that for collateral. So that's another major concern is access to capital for economic development.
Are there USDA programs that you can access, or is that, are there
are.
prohibitions on that?
We're starting to get more and more into that. Definitely, there's some USDA programs that we have been able to make the most of, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement. Our yearly funding allocations just aren't there, and you know, a lot of the funding that's available through USDA is for grants, and we don't always have the matching funds to get grants. We don't always have, you know, the grant writers or the people that can administer the grants. We're pretty short-staffed, and,
Yep.
and so when you get a grant, there's a lot of deliverables, a lot of work that comes along with that, and being able to have that capacity will help. But yearly allocations would be more preferred rather than grants.
Great. Well, I also serve on agricultural appropriations, and I know there's some outreach towards tribes, but I'm going to look into seeing if there
One
should
of
be
the
more of that.
concerns, just real quick, if I could, you know, with USDA, a lot of their programs require a tax return to show how much you did in sales to access those USDA programs. However, we don't pay taxes on the reservation, so it kind of eliminates a lot of tribal people.
Yeah, so there should be all kinds of provisions that cover for that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you, and thank you for the work you're doing at the college.
And I like to add
Yeah.
to you had mentioned we're all different, like Chairman Joe Davis here. Morongo is similar. We provide all our infrastructures, you know, from sewer, water, all of those things the tribe pays for. Some tribes are located in cities where they, rely on, a city's infrastructure. So we are all different, and our needs are all different, and infrastructure is always, especially in those more remote tribes, that's always going to be a problem because they're not geographically located where access to big markets. Fortunately for Morongo, we're right off Interstate 10, and we have been able to generate business, from the traffic flow. To that end, though, on our businesses, we have to provide that infrastructure, the sewer, the water, the roads, and we don't get a lot of money for roads from the BIA, and I think that's a message that you will always hear. Roads are always going to, they're just lack of maintenance and the capital to build those roads.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, Joe, do you lease land out to non-tribal members for agricultural purposes?
We don't. There are fee lands on the reservation that were one-time allotments that were sold, and so there are non-tribal members who own fee land on the reservation, but we don't actively lease land out to non-members.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you all for being here today. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you again.
Sorry I didn't call on you, but I assumed you didn't have any questions. Yeah. And Ryan Wilson. I don't know, you two could have sat closer together. I don't know if you don't like it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Sit close to the microphone.
Yeah, sit close to the microphones. Algin, you're first.
All right, good morning, Chairman and Committee. My name is Elgin Young. I'm an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux Tribe, where I serve as the current Chief of Police. I have over 22 years law enforcement, and my previous position was I was Associate Director during Mr. Zinke's time with the Department of Interior. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to testify and tell my story on the Pine Ridge Reservation.
On which reservation did you say?
Pine Ridge.
Okay.
I realize you guys have heard many important topics over the past few days, and I feel ours is one of the more stressing, I guess. Our stats are posted, and I don't want to bore you with those stats, so I'll tell you the reality of my day-to-day life on the Pine Ridge Reservation. Law enforcement is expected to cover over 3 million acres, roughly the size of Connecticut. We have enrolled members of over 51,460, over a service population of over 40,000 people with 52 communities throughout the reservation. I'm expected to do this with 33 uniformed police officers, 9 lieutenants, and 2 captains. A little backstory on that is when the reservation started, the United States government provided 55 officers to patrol the Pine Ridge Reservation. We go into today, and I have less than that. My reality is we've seen an uptick in guns. Last year, we confiscated 150 guns. Violent crimes is on the rise. We got the drug epidemic. We have children selling each other guns. We had over 590 missing persons reported last year, with 100% of those found. Unfortunately, we had some unfortunate circumstances. We had a 6-year-old shot in the head and killed as a result of a drive-by. A teenage female shot and killed last year. We also had an FBI employee kidnapped during a crime scene investigation. We had a record number of homicides last year. Our officers are not answering all the calls that are being dispatched. And I can go on and on and on. The reality is my officers are overworked. Recently, the Indian Health Service reassumed the ambulance service from the Oglala Sioux tribe. When they reassumed the program, I thought they were supposed to provide that service. There are days when the IHS will simply just say, I give up, and now my officers have to take those calls for the ambulance service. When the reality, the tribe was providing that service before. But to add on to that, last year alone, my officers had to spend over 380 hours at the IHS getting medical clearances so prisoners can go to jail. We have no relief. And to do that with 33 officers, that's 5 to 7 a shift. And when you stick them at IHS for over 8 hours, that's even less. We can't keep up with the feds and the states, their benefits. We increased our salaries, but we can't compete with the retirement or a healthcare system that's that our officers are seeking. I lost 2 last month. We train them and they go on for better programs. I'm here to tell you that the BI system and methodology isn't working for us. We don't get our share of these special initiatives. The BIA tells us that Congress appropriates the money as a cop-out. They give their own staff pay raises, and yet they can't answer questions. Why I ask them, why aren't you paying a tribal officer the same as you're doing a federal officer? Instead, I was exactly told to do the opposite. I was told to reduce my positions even more to meet that salary cap. I'm gonna close with a couple quotes. Chairman, the BIA will tell you that 2.8 officers per 1,000 in the tribe's law enforcement service population, the average amount provided in comparably sized rural communities across the United States, according to DOJ, is nothing more than aspiration. I respectfully ask you, how do I tell my police officers or one of our elders that keeping them safe is only an aspiration? In closing, this subcommittee has exercised its authority to grant immediate emergency relief in the recent past. Simply put, Oglala needs that emergency relief now and in FY24 appropriations. I do not want my officers to face any more violent incidents, let alone any increases, especially as summer comes and tourist season starts. I will work with you in any way necessary to get this addressed. Please give this emergency full cooperation and act. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Ryan?
Chairman Simpson, thank you. Ranking Member Pingree, thank you. And Representative Zinke, aho to you, and Representative Elzy. I wanted to say for the record, I really like your name, your first name. It's a good one, yeah. I concur. Yeah, we concur with each other. That's good. I'm proud to be here today. I appreciate his testimony. There's the president of the Oglala Sioux tribes here. Other members are here. We have Lakota language speakers that are here in the room with us too. So I want to talk about our ask for a little bit and just begin by thanking your full committee chairwoman, Kay Granger. I worked with her back in 06 to 08 on the Native American Code Talker Recognition Act, and she was the lead sponsor on that. And we had a last Code Talker, Clarence Wolfguts, passed away over in Wombly on our Pine Ridge Indian Reservation about 10 years ago or so. But the person that influenced her, his name was Charles Chibity, and he was in World War II as part of the Comanche Code Talkers over there. And he was also a peyote person, and we talked about peyote these last 2 days. I'm going to mention that we're endorsing the ask of the Native American Church in North America for a conservation program in Interior for $5 million. On the language front, we're supporting the President's request for $25 million in the Living Languages program in BIA, and I'm asking for $5 million in the BIE immersion program. This may be the first time in the history of my 2 decades where I have a lesser request than National Indian Education Association, but I don't want to take from other BIE programs. What I'd like to see is you guys insert in the report language that the tribes that have the language capacity, the BIE schools that have the capacity are the ones that get this funding. So we're, Oglalas are here, you heard from Navajo Nation. We wouldn't come before this esteemed committee asking for salmon restoration money. We don't have any salmon. Of these 574 tribes that are left, there's just a few that have languages left as well. And we have to pivot and be flexible and acknowledge the state of condition that we're in, and with laser precision focus, get those finite resources to those communities that still have the capacity to do this. First thing I read when I got on the plane coming here on New York Times front page, 31 trillion in debt. And I want to remind each and every one of you, as you've been reminded the last 2 days, the trust obligation treaty-based appropriations, it's different than entitlement programs. These were already bought and paid for, and we maintain to you, do not balance the budget on the backs of Indian country. And how this is going to go, we're unsure, but we want to really be, I guess, expressive about that. And the old Dale Kildee move, you know, he holds the Constitution up, the Commerce Clause, the Treaty Clause, all of this. It's important for us to revisit that every time we're here as well. So I wanted to share that. And what I want to talk about a little bit is, you know, this American Indian Religious Freedom Act. You heard of it earlier in testimonies. It's really one of the most significant pieces of federal Indian legislation that's ever passed Congress. And ARFA, it's a valid and constitutionally sound exercise of your plenary power over Indian affairs. And I want to ask and request with unanimous consent that we put this into the record here. This is the original American Indian Religious Freedom Act report. It's now 44 years old.
Heavy.
It's heavy, yeah. That was a big Kinko's job there. But we've never reviewed the federal government's implementation of this statute. We've never assessed it. We've never evaluated it. We've never looked at how it's being implemented in modern times. And this is directly linked to languages as well, and how the federal government funds language programs. Now, your fellow member, Representative McCollum, and I, back in 2001, we started working on this. At that time, there was $1.2 million in the Native American Languages Act funding under Administration for Native Americans that 563 tribes were competing for, plus Polynesia. And it all came down to who had a top shelf grant writer. Native languages and their existence shouldn't be based on who has the best grant writer. It shouldn't be based on that. It should be based on the communities that can perform, that have a real solid plan that's based on best practices, and also the capacity of the speakers. So in my request, I do try to accommodate those communities that no longer have languages and recommend that under living languages, in the report language, you can create coalitions of tribes. And you had several Anishinaabe, Ojibwe tribes here earlier where they don't have languages left on their reservation, but they have surrounding partner, neighboring tribes that speak that same language. So if we could coalesce and work on a consortium for them, but I'd like to see a tiered approach, higher grants, longer, and an investment that's really done with some oversight. And that's basically, you know, what I wanted to say on that. You know, Chairman Simpson, every year that I come here, I try to give you guys a legal gift here. And this is this book I wanted to pass to you as well. And this is called Sundancing at Rosebud and Pine Ridge. This was written a long time ago. It's out of print. And this is by Thomas Males. But this, what we had talked about earlier, was our ceremonial life. And that it goes back to the early agency days, and this Congress here in 1883 passed the Court of Indian Offenses to create what is now tribal courts. That whole court system was created to penalize people for speaking their languages and for practicing in ceremonies. And at the time, you would receive 90 days in jail for participating in a ceremony like that. Plus, your family would lose their rations, which was a death sentence back then. So we can't exaggerate this point enough, is we're in a reclamation age now, and it's a race against the clock. But we really need to focus on that. And I just want to close by saying that, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm proud you guys are still doing this. And I thank you. I know you said you were honored by our presence, but it's reciprocated.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Some people paid a lot more than 90 days in jail
Yeah.
for sun dancing, you know. Thank you. I will actually read that. I read a lot of books. I will read that. Thank you for your testimony. I've been to both Rosebud and Pine Ridge. How long does it take to get from your dispatch center to the furthest extent of your reservation?
If you're driving the speed limit, it's over an hour and a half.
Driving not the speed limit. If you got an emergency call.
Which most of our calls are.
Yeah,
We'll cut it down to maybe an hour.
yeah. And if you get a domestic abuse call, if it takes you an hour to get there, the problem's over. You know, that's the problem. I've heard what you were saying when I was there. In fact, there was a police officer that lost his life rushing to one of those circumstances and wrecked his car and stuff. It obviously hasn't gotten better.
Not at all, Chairman. And we've been trying to approach the federal government to clear that, but they are in no position to budge on the contract itself.
Yeah, and I heard you say in your testimony that you've lost officers to surrounding communities because they can pay better and all that kind of stuff. That's something I've heard from my reservations in Idaho, the show bands. Pocatello is 25 miles down the road. Idaho Falls is 25 miles. Well, it's actually only 12 miles from Fort Hall, each direction. And they train the officers, and then the officers are gone. Not all of them, but, you know, it's hard to keep officers there when they're paying so much better in Pocatello or Blackfoot.
Chairman, if I may, during my time with Pine Ridge, I've seen quite a few applications of our people wanting to be law enforcement officers. And by regulation, it says that the Bureau will pay our police officers just as much as they would theirs. Recently, as I said in my testimony, that the SAC informed me that they're increasing their police officers from GS8 to GS11s. Mm-hmm. I didn't see no appropriations for that. And then when I pressed him to ask him where that funding's coming from, or if he planned to include that in our 638 contract, he couldn't answer that question. So that tells me I'm gonna lose even more officers, and he wants me to cut my patrol down and then add a little bit of salt to the wound. The OJS director said he can do what I'm doing with 18 police officers. That's an insult to the tribe.
Yeah. I will tell you, this is an issue that I don't want to dwell on this too long. You and I will talk about this in the future. This is a problem I'm going to solve, or I'm going to work with you to solve.
Thank you, Chairman.
It's a huge issue. I'm a big supporter of I believe we've got to do whatever we can to save Native American languages. It's part of the culture. That's part of our history. That's part of the American history, you know? And I've been to some of the immersion classes in Fort Hall where they're teaching Bannock. It's fascinating to go in and watch these young kids speaking Bannock language. I don't understand a word they're saying. I could sit there for an hour and I wouldn't know what they said, but it's great to watch them, you know, and they're preserving a very important part of their heritage and their culture. So it's great to have that. But there are some tribes that are both salmon tribes.
No,
And I know what you were saying.
yeah.
I know what you were saying. Thank you. I appreciate you both being here. Ms. Pingree?
Yeah, and thank you for saying you're going to work with the Pine Ridge policing issues. I think that's really important, and I hope we can be helpful. The numbers up there are staggering, and just to hear you describe the challenges your officers are taking on, thank you for them, and thank you for the work you're doing, but we really have to do more. So I hope we can offer some assistance. And I, too, am very supportive of the preservation of native languages. I know in Maine, we just lost one of our strong proponents of the Penobscot, or the Passamaquoddy language, and you know, it's always said when you see a really great speaker go, but there's a lot of interest in that, and I hope we can continue to support that. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Mr. Zinke?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again. many members of the audience I've met in the past, but I do want you to know this is a bipartisan committee, and there is a deep respect for the sovereignty of the nations. And all 574, and it has increased when I was secretary. But I didn't really know how bad BIA was until I was in charge of it. Part of the issue is there's 572 or 574 sovereign nations, and everyone is different. And the one thing I figured out is that while a lot of people like to put all the nations together in one big, nice pile, nothing could be further from the truth. So each nation has a history, language, rights, but it comes down to two things. One is there's treaty obligations. A promise made should be a promise kept. Secondly, we have national obligations. I hear over and over in law enforcement, but I also recognize we don't have a border. And whether you live in Bozeman or Crow Agency or pick one, we all face the same thing, is that we have a nation that we're being attacked by drugs and cartels, and it particularly affects the nations. And so, well, we also have obligations to make sure we secure our border, and we have obligations to set conditions for economic prosperity. And in some places, the economic prosperity is not there. So some of it's regulatory, and I mentioned the chairman sometimes that if you're a county adjacent to a reservation, there is no way a county would put up with a regulatory oversight. When people figure out you can't, even on tribal land, the tribal council cannot make the decision because the EPA is going to make it for you. So we've got to set the conditions so nations can prosper. So I'm sure this is a bipartisan effort. We'll work with you, but we have to honor our treaty obligations. Because, I'll end this. I recognize forgotten people, not only nations, but we've forgotten our treaty obligations to our territories as well. So we have Tinian, Saipan, Guam, American Samoa. They too have been forgotten. So appreciate you being here. I appreciate everyone coming. I know the trip to D.C. is long. Say, remember, one day in D.C., you got to shower for 4 hours.
That means I'm continually in the damn shower. Thank you, Mr. Zinke. Mr. Elsie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. I'm new to this committee. I don't have any tribal lands in my district, and so I'm new to this entire process, but I'm glad I saw you yesterday. I'm glad you're here today. I have a couple of very basic questions as the new guy, who you can assume that I know nothing, and I'm not ashamed of that because I'm here to learn about you. 33 patrol officers for 51,000 people. What would be the ideal number?
Sir, when I started back in 2000, we had 110, and we felt short-staffed. What I feel is a bare minimum is 140. Uniformed police, that excludes your command staff, your K-9 officers, school resource officers, just 140 to respond to the communities.
And so that means 140 that are actually working. So you need 5 times more officers than you currently have, assuming somebody's going to get sick, somebody's got an emergency leave, something like that. You need 5 times more officers than you have now.
Yes, sir.
And will an appropriations process fill up those 120 billets that you need filled? Are there enough people who want to do this at the current pay rates to fill up that 150 billets?
Sir, I feel if we had the same benefits that a government employee does, which there's precedent set that's allowable, that we can get there. We see young Lakota men wanting to apply day after day, and there's many that left, including myself, to the BIA for a higher pay rate. There's a lot of us that want to stay home and stay close to our family, but we can't.
Now, do those have to be tribal members?
They do not.
So anybody can go be a tribal police officer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you mentioned that the federal officers were going to be going from GS 8 to GS 11. What do your officers currently make? They've been in for a couple of years.
Sir, I took this position in May, and my first initiative was get us up to the GS 8 pay scale.
Okay.
So we pushed them up to, I think it was 62,000, and then they come back and they made this announcement. I don't think there's any planning. I mean, I'm not going to be shy because I've heard disclosures that the BIA is just not going to fill their current positions. That's not fair to the tribes. That's not fair to us. If there was proper planning, because there's specialized funding that tribes go after and that Congress allocates year after year, missing and murdered, drug enforcement, what else? School resource officers. The reality is the BIA pads their programs. When we ask for that money, we don't get a cent of it. Sir, when I was with your administration, there was a thing called technical assistance. We realized that we couldn't fill all the positions within the BIA. So what did? We put the money out to the tribes, and we consulted with the tribe. Matter of fact, Pine Ridge received $47,000 for cold cases during your administration, sir. We asked to contract those functions. The BIA outright told us no. So, I mean, the tribes lobby for that extra specialized funding, but it stays in BIA.
Okay. And so GS 11 now is 77K, and so you're not going to be able to get anybody who's going to work 12 on, 12 off for GS 8 pay that you're talking about, with all the risks that are involved and all the driving. Where do you get your equipment? Is that something that you purchase through a funding process, or where does it come from?
That's a good question, sir. The BIA's process. They could purchase their vehicles out of a centralized pot, their computers, their guns. I'm expected to do that with the $3.5 million I'm awarded for 33 officers. That's supposed to come out of my contract. So the $3.5 million is supposed to replace 33 cars every year. That's not a reality. The vests, the bulletproof vests, those have a shelf life. Those have to be replaced, and we're expected to do that. So in turn, the tribe has been cutting positions to fulfill that mandate to keep the officers safe.
Okay. So you don't get any other, like grants from other law enforcement agencies within the federal government?
We do seek grants,
Okay.
but we don't get awarded quite a bit. I think we get one DOJ grant a year.
Okay. Weapons, ammo, and training, all within that $3.5 million budget?
Yes, sir.
So you're in a day in which ammo is extremely expensive, so you're having to either keep it or train it, but it's hard to do both. So you're now trying to do a job with either training or being on the job.
Yes, sir.
And you either, okay, I think I've heard enough. This is unconscionable that you're at you're at 20% of your strength. You're asking for a safe community, and you need 5 times more officers. This shouldn't be that hard of a sell.
Mm-hmm. Welcome to Congress.
Yeah. Yeah. Seems a little crazy, doesn't it?
It's just wrong.
Yes, sir.
I don't get upset very often, but this is upsetting. Everything else stems from a safe community.
Yep.
The safety of your women, the safety of your children, the health of the community, the ability to hire teachers. If it's not a safe community, you're not going to get teachers. There's no housing, so you can't get teachers anyway, but you don't have a safe community. It all links together. So, and not to mention burnout, stress, and PTS.
Yes, sir.
And then disability down the road. So we're on your side. And as he said, this is a bipartisan issue. So, and as the chairman has said, he's ready to move on this. And so I'm glad to be a part of this subcommittee and working with people like this. So I don't make any promises because I'm in Congress, because it does take time. But man, this is just wrong. Okay. So thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Ms. Kilmer, do you have anything? Let me just say, could you briefly, like real briefly, we got to move on, talk about the training that your officers must have?
So the BIA mandates before they even get in a police car that they go down to Artesia for a 16-week program. We have a poor successful rate down there. We've graduated 2 since I've been there, but we cycled 9. The state has now opened their doors, but they don't get the BIA funding for it. That's more realistic because it's there in South Dakota.
Yeah.
But they're not going to put our officers first when it's a shorter academy. There's more accountability, better training, and it's just all. I mean, we had a better success rate as a tribe of our officers going to the state academy.
Yeah.
So 16-week is the base minimum, along with the FTO program, which is roughly 6 weeks afterwards.
I knew that. I just wanted you to say it so that it was on the record that these are not just people that you go out and pick up on the street and say, hey, you want to be a police officer? They're trained police officers.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes.
A quick question. You mentioned there was about 800, staggering number of missing, and you said you were able to locate them all.
Sir, in 2022, there was over 590, and we found them all. Unfortunately, we had a couple perish.
And just out of, I don't want to hold you the number. So, yeah, you found some of them were murdered or dead. How many returned to the reservation? As opposed to you found them, they're located, but how many returned and how many chose not to for some reason?
I'll say roughly, the folks we located were roughly around 95%.
Coming back?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. That's a good number, thank you.
And just if I could on that, with the Missing and Murdered Initiative, going back to your question, sir, we have to, we know that in order to find somebody, it requires immediate response, immediate investigations. The BIA gets missing and murdered monies, and I'm expected to do it with my 33 uniformed police officers with no assistance. So just let that sink in. And
Do you think it would be better if the money came directly to you?
well, it would provide people to keep on top of it and just obligate solely to that. We can go back to some of the former years where we do have missing persons that we haven't located.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you both for testifying today. Algernon, we'll be in touch.
Thank you, sir.
We need to solve this. Thank you. Now we have Dr. Vahan Setyan and John Brady. Oh, no, that's okay. No, if you got questions, that's okay. Dr. Vahan, you're first. Push the button on the mic, if you would, please. Thank you.
Is this better? Yep. Thank you. Chairman Simpson, honorable committee and subcommittee members, thank you for having me today. I'm coming from Phoenix, Arizona, but I spent a lot of time on the reservation, and you do have my written testimony of what I have done and what my topic is. But at the same time, I do support and I do share all the sentiments of all the tribal members that have testified yesterday and today, because I do come from the trenches. I've lived on the reservation for many years. I worked with medicine men and tribal leaders, and I would say businessmen and elders, and all have the same narrative, and that they're really suffering, and I come with a very heavy heart. I established the first end-of-life and palliative care on the reservation in the largest tribe in the United States, in the Navajo Nation. And I wrote the first policies under the memorandum of agreement approved by the Department of Justice. That's how far I went to really provide this service to elders with cancer who have no service at all. And it was the first time that a tribal government, Indian country, realized that there are elders out there who need hospice care they didn't know anything about. And that kind of radiated to other tribes, and now I work with many of them. And I eventually ended up at the Osheti-Shakwi, treaty government. I work within the Sioux Nation, and many other tribes as well on healthcare economic development. And me living on the reservation, I saw Grandma hitchhike her way 50 to 100 miles to see her doctor, and then she dies on the way because it's cold. I have seen children in IHS hospitals, and she's just there and nobody takes care of her, and she dies there on the bleachers. So I understand that this is an appropriation meeting for allocation of funds for Indian health, which is very, very important, but I think there is a bigger problem. It's not just only the funding that is the problem. I think there is more. It's not the shortfall in funding that's causing the issue. I think that the issue is that there isn't a collaboration with outside organizations that can partner up with tribal nations to bring in something that works. Pumping money all the time, every year, higher and higher, it's not going to solve anything because just the foundation is just not there. Can you imagine IHS not having any policies for hospice and palliative care at all? Okay. We have 15,000 physicians that I work with across the nation that can change the fabric of Indian health in 5 years. I mean, from telehealth to global doctors and nurses to clinics and so forth. And many of my tribal colleagues wish they could be here today, but it was just too expensive for them to fly out. But they did give me some heartfelt quotes that you'll be very emotional if you hear them. For example, my uncle Lester at Tuajale, the Navajo Nation. He's in his 70s. He's a former chairman of the National Indian Health Board. He's been waiting 3 years as a veteran, Vietnam veteran, whose brother also is a Purple Heart recipient, waiting 3 years for him to take care of his knee. And nothing's happening at the VA, and he's very far from the VA, and there are no immediate health care services. Another person from the Navajo Nation asking how can we build private hospitals to finally fix health care. So as you can see, IHS since 1955 has come to a point where we still have these professionals and elders begging for health care. And me seeing all this, being from the trenches, is very emotional because you see this firsthand. That's why I do sympathize with Oglala Sioux and the police chief, Mr. Young, because I've seen it. I've been there. It's very dangerous, and women and children missing. My goodness, I raised it up at the Amnesty International when that was happening several years ago, and so my testimony is really a reflection of not only of what's happening, but I think it's a reflection of an actual genocide happening right now in real time. Genocide through healthcare issues, genocide through economic stagnation, genocide culturally, language loss and all that. And I think that's happening at the same time. I mean, we are talking about 574 federally recognized tribes. What about the tribes that are not recognized yet? What about the treaty Indians? And we have a lot of those. We have a lot of tribal bands who are seeking federal recognition for them to get the benefits done. And also at the same time, even the veterans who are Native American are having issues with pension funds and so forth. So they try to reach everywhere just to get a solution for the problem that they're facing. Before COVID hit, actually around the time February or March, I published The Tipping Point, which was a manuscript to warn tribal governments that when COVID hits, it's going to be a travesty on the reservations because they were not ready healthcare-wise, and it was going to close down their casinos, and they're going to lose a lot of gaming revenue. And that's what happened. But unfortunately, I had more calls coming in from Wall Street than the tribal nations on this manuscript. So with all the heartfelt sentiments that I have regarding the reservation, I want to make sure that at least the quotes that are given to me are actually those people that are having a hard time communicating that to IHS. And my very close colleague of mine from the Nahuatl Commission, Governance of the Navajo Nation, he died at the age of 34 from COVID coma, and he was trying to ask his own government to help him to set up shop so I can bring in the doctors, and that never happened. And in other words, the CARES Act money and all that went to tribes never really went down to help the community in time, at least. So that's why whether I hail out of the Oceti-Sakowin Treaty government or the Navajo Nation or anywhere else, I have thousands of elders and medicine men and tribal leaders, who have come together to really fix the healthcare once and for all. I mean, it makes it more special for me, an honor, because I'm not even Native American. I'm an Armenian of Armenian descent. So it's the first time that I'm really representing a Native country. And not only that, but I have the Asian American National Committee. We have a multi-ethnic collaborative that is trying to help Indian country. And I think it's a wonderful feeling that we have all these people coming together to help. So I guess I could just bring it up to 5 minutes. I mean, I can write a dissertation on this, but 5 minutes is, so appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to the chairman and subcommittee and everyone that has a good helping hand with the committee and all the duties and responsibilities. I'm here on behalf of the Native American Church of North America. These past few days, I'm sure you got all been hearing our challenges and all the, the laws that we're governed by. We're trying to uphold to our teachings, most of all our ancestors. So it's been since 1776, there's been documented 571 species that have disappeared from the face of the earth. Why? Because of human encroachment. As documented, 49 tribes have gone extinct because of removal of their habitat, dispossession of their properties, genocide practiced upon their lives and livelihood. The removal of these kinds of things are sad and disheartening. For our holy medicine, my tribe, we call it Mabariwahuba. Science calls it peyote. They're losing their home, their habitat. It would be like the United States of America losing their Constitution. Both provide meaningful practices of freedom, of democracy, of love, faith, hope, and charity. We cannot be expected to live without our medicine, and in this realm we live in, the world is filled with violence, greed, jealousy, and hurtfulness. It is this medicine that brings us healing and comfort from all the ills we face every day. We are here today respecting our ancestors, remembering our unborn children and grandchildren that are coming up behind us. They expect the United States government to live up to the sacred covenant that we have with the divine creator, those including all, honoring all creation. With this in mind, our medicine, our Mabariwahuba, should endure forever. That's why we're here today. We have fear of our children's future because of all of us know the good, the power, and the beauty and the healing that comes from this medicine. We should pass on to the next generation, nothing less. So with this ability today and the efforts to have this habitat conservation preservation initiative not only passed but funded, the NACNA requests that our government provide not only funding but meaningful consultation that has something. This was something that was promised from government to government relationships. So like we've been hearing these past few days, being the National Congress American Indian Peyote Task Force, along with my uncle, Oliver Littlecook, he testified yesterday. And we're trying every avenue to advocate the awareness that our holy medicine is being challenged, is being abused daily because of nothing in the law today protects the purity, the plant itself. This medicine is a good medicine. It helped a lot of our people when the doctors, when Western medicine gives up on our family and our relatives. Go home, make arrangements. Our relatives depend on God, the Creator, the Great Spirit. He's number one. Along with that, we use this holy medicine. This medicine is a good medicine. It cured a lot of things that our doctors, this Western medicine, has given up upon our relatives. So today, as we speak, this land is being disrupted by USDA, which we know this it's protected, it's federally protected. So we're confused in why all these different things are taking place over here, over there. You know, all these decriminalization movements. There's 28 states as we speak have on the table has legislation to decrim. And it's sad, it seemed like the federal government should be there in a blink of an eye because our federal preemption, our American Indian Religious Freedom Act, because it states in there it only needs to be around a spiritual setting, around prayer. It's a bona fide religion, meaning original one, bona fide. You know, it's not like using it for recreational and doing all these kind of things. It has to be around a spiritual setting. So we're trying our best. It's been over 30 years since we've been testifying and trying our humble best to make this come alive again. And we know for the goodness that your committee, the chairman, subcommittee, all your expertise, all your good talents, that's why you're here. They promoted you to do the best for Indian country. And you heard all our people from Indian nations, whether it be in health, whether it be law enforcement, drugs, housing, whatever it may be. Before we do anything, prayer is number one. Prayer is number one. We try to uphold to our teachings on a holistic approach, depending on the elements, the sun, the wind, the moon, the stars. Here we are today speaking for our medicine and our way of life, and we're just asking, we're not asking for the world, we're just asking for just a lump sum of $5 million for this Purity Habitat Conservation Initiative demonstration project to be housed at the Department of Interior, Office of the Assistant Secretary, Indian Affairs. So this is something new to us. We ain't ones to be coming out and, making, any kind of, I guess, how we really feel. But, this is a sacred, this is holy to us at Native American Church members. So I'm speaking on behalf of 400,000. We're fortunate today. This is one of the oldest religions here today intertribally. This holy medicine, this sacrament, has been documented, carbon dated over 10,000 years. And here we are today, 2023. We're trying to uphold to the teachings and the way our relatives, left for us. So we're trying our best here. Thank you all for your time. And most of all, I'm going to thank my wife for supporting me and making me try my best here for our people, because we depend on this. We cannot live without this medicine. This medicine is wonderful. So I just want to put a comma right there and until we, continue on some more. This ain't the only time. We've been here last February, Boots on the Hill. We had all our church members going to the representatives, showing awareness, doing all these kind of things, meeting with the USDA, meeting with the White House staff last fall and yesterday, and we really, they want to help. They want to help. They're just trying to figure out, the logistics of everything. So within this testimony, it kind of has everything that we're asking for so kindly. So thank you for your time. And mods and good odds, on behalf of our MHA Nation, our Fort Berthold, our chairman, Mark Fox, our council representatives, thank you all you do for our tribe
and all our tribes throughout the northwest, east, and south. So God bless.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. I appreciate both of your testimony. Look forward to working with you on this stuff. I don't really have any questions.
Thank you, John.
Shelley, do you?
I don't either, but thank you both for your.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yes.
Brian?
Doctor, you say you have a formula for transitional,
Uh-huh.
transformational care.
Yes.
Do you have enough details and what would it take to do a pilot program to prove the
Absolutely.
efficacy?
It's ready. It's capitalized.
I would
Here's
like
the
to see that.
physicians. Thank you very much, Mr. Zenke. I'll do that personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're back.
Thank you, and I thank you all both for your testimony today. We look forward to working with you as we try to put a bill together and satisfy a lot of the needs that we have here. And there's a hell of a lot of needs, obviously.
Thank you.
So, Chairman, along with all what we testified, if this could be documented too, along with, just pictures, there's
Okay, you can-
data,
you can research
that
it,
will
yeah.
be really helpful for Native American church relatives, if
We had a
people-
really good
So-
discussion earlier this morning on.
Yeah.
Paley, so
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Jared Michael Erickson, Jeremy Takala, Christopher Peters, Nicholas Lewis. Thank you. You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's some nice beadwork. Jared Michael Erickson, you're first on my list. That's nice beadwork too.
I know, she was wanting to see it, so.
Yeah. I know you should
Wahasi-
pull that after I said that. Yeah.
I was like, you should show yours too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Wahasa Halt and Chase Squeeze, Weast. Hello, good day. My name is Jared Michael Erickson. I'm the chairman for the Caldwell Confederated Tribes. It's good to see Representative Zinke. I know you came out to Caldwell not too long ago. Chairman Simpson, working with some of the salmon stuff you've been working on. Today I'd like to talk about a few things. One in particular is IHS. You guys' oversight on it. We've having a lot of issues with purchase referred care. So Caldwell Tribe, I believe maybe one or two other tribes here is also direct service tribes. Some of us haven't quite done the 638 process to take over those functions, the IHS functions of our facilities. We're having a lot of issues with, like I said, PRC. We'd like to see if the government accountability office could take a look into what's going on with purchase referred care and some language you guys have oversight over. So it's one of our asks. I know IHS has been an at-risk program since 2017. And I feel like that's continued. We've
Probably before
lost
that.
a lot of members due to not getting the services they need. Recently, 2 weeks ago, I lost my uncle. He was dealing with he didn't get lost due to that, but he had an operation and he was having to worry about getting his EKG paid for, right? And so we had his services this last Saturday. And so just things he shouldn't be having to worry about when he's just trying to have an operation done, right? Not having to worry about his bill being paid for. Most of our elders on fixed income, they don't have other means to pay for this. So sitting there waiting to get their bills paid. We've lost members, like I said, due to waiting on to getting their referrals and stuff paid for that one, I know, I can't mention names obviously, but lost due to a heart attack, waiting for a heart appointment to get in, right? And so it's these things we see all the time that keep happening. We need more accountability to be looked into. So, so what we did get, the regional office, the Portland area office, actually took over PRC from us about 3 years ago, and we got it back in October of 2022, but there hasn't been a lot of time yet for us to recoup of all the things that went on that we don't feel that they helped to, actually made the problem worse. And so see if we can fix that through you guys, again, through the GAO, I think would be a huge benefit to us. We've also been having a lot of documentation requirements for our membership that is in the IHS handbook or their policies. So every year our elders, our members are being required to go to enrollment to show their blood quantum, a utility bill to show that they're within the service area for these, to get services at ours. So every year, even I had to do it recently, which it's now been removed from the regional office, but we're not sure why that was even put in place. And so again, that goes back to people not being able to get seen, not having enough staff. Obviously, we only have like one doctor, and we're supposed to have 5. So they get their appointment gets pushed back, and so then they're again don't get the services they need. Then these problems get worse and worse and worse. And this includes dental as well. We have a lot of issues also with outside private practices getting paid through PRC. They're not receiving the funding, so a lot are actually not even willing to work with IHS to even, because a lot of them we had before. We don't have a dentist at ours. We used to have one for years, and we haven't had one for 4 or 5 years now. Hopefully, we have one coming on soon. But so these dentists aren't getting paid, so and so they want not even work with us anymore. So we're not having providers that are even able to provide service outside of the tribe, let alone within. So we are in the process of 638ing. We by resolution our service unit. But that takes time with the application process and then the negotiation process associated with that. So I'll just kind of move on to the next one that I'd like to talk about is prioritizing the tribal wildland fire funding. A lot of you know that our Caldwell Tribe has had a lot of acres burned since 2015. We've burned about 700,000 acres of our 1.4 million acre reservation. Some of these can be prevented, right? We've asked for funding, in particular in 2017, August 2017, we asked for $300,000 for preparedness funding. Knowing that we had a major storm coming in August, we had, weather report said there's a severe isolated thunderstorm coming. We knew it looked like it was going to hit the reservation. We asked for this $300,000 for funding. And in turn, a 4,500 acre fire happened, cost $15 million. Seems like a bad use of funds, right? Those could be used elsewhere. So that happens quite often that we get. We get mega fires on our reservation on a regular basis. I know Zinke's been out there and he's seen, we're kind of that shrub step to timber, tribe and similar to Idaho.
Yep.
And so we're in a fire regime. We know we burn up. My neighbors here, they're in the same habitat. So
Pretty country, less pretty burnt.
Yeah. A lot of buildup of fuels over time has created a lot of issues for us. And so we're working on getting some of those fixed. But again, just having that preparedness funding would have been really beneficial when it came to those fires, right? And this isn't one example of one fire. So it'd be good cost savings to use that preparedness funding to get that ahead of time. And funding. So we're always competing with the federal agencies for funding, and that comes to when it's actually comes to fighting the fires as well. So 2015, we had the North Star fire. We're competing with resources to get even air attack, and they all went to federal lands, which are managed, right? I understand federal lands are managed, but they also have a trust responsibility to us. And so we had 250,000 acre fire on the North Star fire happen, but there was no resources available to us. That fire, there was 50-mile-an-hour winds. We had 4 or 5 dozer line, thick cat lines, and this fire was still jumping those lines. And that was just local resources. We would have had air resources. We could actually hopefully stop some of that. And so that's going to take 80 to 100 years for those forests to recoup, right? And then just the loss of revenue, because that is our trust asset, and it's for our governmental services, and that's our membership's money, and all that's lost for a long time, right? And some of it's sterilization of soils and whatnot for quite a while. So, public safety and justice. I know we had the individual up here earlier talking about law enforcement. So we have a 1.4 million acre reservation. And there's at times where we've had such a hard time competing with other agencies, like has been said. I think we're pretty on par with salary now, but the other benefits that come along with federal pensions and all these things, that it's hard to compete with that. So we end up training officers and we end up losing them to local municipalities, local agencies. So just as an example, he talked about how they had different 33 officers and they need 140, or I can't remember the exact numbers he said, but we've had times where for our 2,200 square mile reservation, we've had one officer on duty to patrol the whole, at night, patrol the whole reservation. So it takes 2 hours to get from one side of the reservation to the other. So, things happen with domestic violence, drugs, theft, with the opiate fentanyl issue that we're dealing with everywhere in this country. It's not a timely response time, right? And so we're asking for the committee to provide the $75 million increase in the criminal investigations and police services account to really fulfill the BI regions for all tribes to hire what they need necessary to patrol our reservations to keep our people safe. So with that, I'll close, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to meet with us.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
All right. Nick Pachwai. Good afternoon, everyone. Chair Simpson, Ranking Member Pingree, and distinguished members of the subcommittee here. So I'm Jeremy Takal. I come from the Confederate Tribes and Bands of the Yakama Nation. I serve on 3 committees: the Fish and Wildlife as the chair, the legislative chair, and the Law and Order chair. think Chairman Erickson took some of my talking points here, so. But no, I appreciate the voice that was echoed earlier, in regards to enforcement. Yakama Nation, we've been struggling, with retaining our officers. As it was said, we lose, trained officers to city departments or county. But, we've changed some processes internally to where we're actually trying to keep them and retain them. We also have current officers that are down at the academy. So, that week-long process is still going to be probably about a year until they actually can fully be on the road, patrolling and enforcing the law. But for Yakama Nation, we need at least 76 officers. Currently, we only have 20 officers. We also have a lot of fish and game that are down in the Columbia River area, also patrolling when the Yakama Nation are fishing. We also have patrols up in our closed area. And so you can see we're spread thin, but I do want to mention we do have a great relationship with the Yakama County. And so, but they're in the same situation as well where they need enforcement resources as well. But we're trying to work on that together, collaboratively, working with the county commissioners, working with our staff as well. So I want to make sure that you guys are aware of it, that we in our area, that's a big thing that is needed. Congressman or Chair Simpson, I know you've been a big advocate when it comes to Columbia River, and we want to thank you for your leadership in that when, you came out with the Lower Snake River Dam proposal. For Yakama Nation, we've been struggling. We have over 200 plus employees within our fisheries program, but we have a lot of congressional approved projects, and we like to refer as the $1 billion backlog. These are shovel-ready projects ready to go, and climate change, is here, so that's putting pressures on, some of this work that needs to be happening. We do a lot of hatchery. We have a kelp program. We have reintroduction. We have RME. We have predation. But, some of these things are just not being fully funded. There's these silos that we have to go through. The tribes are competing, for these funds. And it's very disheartening because the tribes are trying to do what's right, and we shouldn't be competing amongst each other. So we ask, that this committee supports us in that and fund the Columbia River Basin $1 billion backlog. Yesterday, I know we had Columbia River and a Tribal Fish Commission here. Also, you guys probably heard about the Columbia River Inlet Treaty Fish and Access sites. These are 28 sites that need improvements, and currently we cannot get these things upkeep, with the current 638 contracts. So 16 million plus is needed to address that. We also have a Wapto irrigation project that's underfunded. The BIA has systematically decreased its support for water measurement and crop reporting. Water conservation on the Yakama Reservation is nearly impossible without significant capital investments. So working with the BIA and other partners, the tribe has developed a modernization and conservation plan that should be funded. Speaking of the 638 contract, we have 11,000 members, and so one thing that we're having issues with is the Federal Appraisal and Valuation Services Offices. It's creating an issue, when it comes to probate and leasing functions. Current funding levels only provide a single appraiser for Yakama Nation's appraisals. The Yakama Nation submitted mass appraisals based on regression modeling to AVSO. And so, there's insufficient staff, and, the authorities are costing the Yakama Nation and its members a huge, huge setback here. So, we need to address that part. We also have issues, when it comes to getting timber sales. Last year, the BIA only completed one timber sale within our 650,000 acre forest. Dozens of vacant forestry positions have sat open for more than a decade at BIA forestry program within our governmental headquarters. We have tribally owned logging companies who've gone out of business because we could not get any timber sales approved. And so, we also have our own Yakama Nation forest products where it provides 200 employment. So you can see the chain reaction there that is setting back without these timber sales getting approved. The last thing I want to end on, is, and we were here 2 weeks ago during NCAI, making some stops. We did stop at BIE, and we're struggling, with our tribal school. We have a 70-year-old facility, and, we have this utilizing the BIE's facility condition index, and, we're rated at poor. And we're actually, on the list like at 46. And, currently I think they're only able to address 2 schools per year. And I think overall, for the tribes, we need, replacement funding that drastically needs to increase so, we can do more for tribal schools across the nation. We currently are working on that, locally, and so we're hoping to, find, the many opportunities that's available to the tribes, but I would advocate for overall that BIE needs to increase its funding. So I want to again thank you, Chair Simpson, Zinke. I know you guys are all familiar with the Yakama Nation, and appreciate your guys' support on the Columbia River salmon advocacy.
You bet. It's great we're going on that BIA school thing. I'll be dead before we get to your school.
I hear you.
Yeah.
20 to 30 years until we actually are that's how long we have to wait.
That's crazy. Next on the list is Christopher.
All right, well, Hachlalhel, Tualagui, and Hawatubes Chalub, good day to all of you, and thank you to every one of you for taking time to listen to us today and listen to our priorities. First, I just want to say thank you to those who went before me and spoke to law enforcement concerns. Before becoming the chair of the Squaxin Island Tribe, I was in law enforcement for 20 years, including 4 years as a police chief, and I just concur to everything they say and appreciate what they're speaking to, and I support it. I'm actually here to speak about healthcare. It's something that the federal government has struggled to keep up their obligation on, and that's nicely putting it over the years. We at our small tribe have made do. We've overcome. We provide services for our people in a lot of ways. Where we're coming short is providing medical care facilities. This makes it really tough. If you don't have the facilities to provide adequate care, you're not providing adequate care, period. These things are very expensive and difficult to provide. We have since recently put our mental health facilities in a couple of double wides that are dilapidated and really unhealthy to do anything, let alone provide mental health services. We just can no longer continue to provide the level of care that we need to our people in the current facilities that we have. Right now, the totality of our health and human services departments, we're about 12,000 square feet altogether. And according to the Indian Healthcare Services Systems Planning Tool, which calculates current user population and projections of growth, they say we need a minimum of 25,000 square feet just to provide the basics of adequate services. So 25,000 feet, we're at 12. We're not even half of what they're saying is the minimum to provide adequate services. So we're just no longer able to provide adequate care to our people. And the Squaxin Tribe is in desperate need for congressional appropriations to construct a new facility. Healthcare is something that we have struggled with for a long time. Native people are one of the highest levels of diabetes and heart disease and you name it, we're right there. And as much as I appreciate the things that we have received at this point, our facilities are becoming run down and dilapidated, and we're unable to provide quality health care at this point. And so we're looking for help on that. Another part is we also run and operate the Northwest Indian Treatment Center, and it is an inpatient substance abuse treatment center. We're actually quite proud of this facility. It is accredited and nationally recognized. We provide culturally relevant treatment with best practice of dialectical behavioral therapy, and it's a model for tribes. And we have tribal members from the entire region come to our facility, and our numbers are as good, if not better, than most places because of the service that we provide. However, we are underfunded in a couple areas. We need to expand out a little bit of our building, but also one of the areas that is most critical in someone's recovery is when they graduate and they go back to the reservation. The studies show that first year is when you are at the most vulnerable. So our treatment center provides recovery support. We send people out to these reservations to check up, continue to add care, and they work with their alumni, their graduates. But we are underfunded. We are struggling to keep up with travel and training dollars to give that adequate care, and we've had to cut back on that. And we're seeing a drop-off in the people falling off and having to come back. And we don't want them to have to come back. We want them to go back and be healthy members of their community. So that's another piece. And then finally, we are also shortly funded on our shellfish management dollars. We have a large area of shellfish land, tidelands where we're at. We call ourselves the people of the water. We have lived off of shellfish for thousands of years. However, just digging clams is not quite how it works. There's a science behind it. There are studies that go with it. There's management and co-management that goes with it. So we can't actually go dig those clams responsibly. We're not going to do that until we have the funding and the people to go out there and actually do the surveys and the work so that we can continue to provide that treaty resource for our people. And so that's my third and final ask. Thank you for your time today.
Appreciate it, Christopher. Nicholas.
Good afternoon, Chairman Simpson, Ranking Member Pingree, and honorable members of the committee. Thank you for holding the American Indian and Alaska Native Public Witness hearing and for inviting the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board here to testify on these issues. The Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board represents the 43 federally recognized tribes in Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. My name is Nicholas Lewis. I'm a council member from the Lummi Nation in Washington State. And I'm also the chairman of the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board. And I'll also add that I'm an 8-year Navy veteran, served honorably, and a proud father of a son who just enlisted the other day. And I'm going to be going back home to see him ship out for boot camp in the next few days. We are accountable here, or we are here today to be accountable to the future generations with our words, with our work, and with our actions. This subcommittee will make decisions today that directly affect each and every one of our future generations. It doesn't matter where you are. The work from this table affects all of us. Chairman Simpson and Ranking Member Pingree, I know you understand these issues and have long been champions for so many issues. And we thank the subcommittee for continuing to support the increased funding that we ask for every year, especially the advanced appropriations that we're finally able to secure last year. That was a major milestone in getting stability for some of our health work. My testimony today, I want to highlight our most urgent and long-standing needs in the Northwest, and I ask that my full testimony will be submitted for the record. The most pressing issue in our communities is the double crisis of fentanyl and untreated mental health. Fentanyl is not only killing our people, it is impacting each and every one of us. And sadly, it isn't getting any better. We are seeing people that are younger and younger being affected by this, to where now even infants are starting to pass away from fentanyl overdose. On the Lummi Reservation last year, we had a 3-month-old that died of a fentanyl overdose. You look at news articles, 3 months.
3 months.
Yes. You can look at news articles. There was a family that rented an Airbnb, a 19-month-old overdosed just from crawling on the floor. You know, those things are starting to happen more and more. And the fentanyl addiction does not happen overnight. Most of the opiate users are in extreme pain, whether it is physical or emotional. Trauma is at the core, and that is where we must focus our efforts. Our people are hurting across this country, and they need our help. And we need your help here today by honoring our requests. Tribes have long recognized how deeply opiate and substance use disorders impact our tribal communities. And healing can occur when our relatives receive effective treatment and support on the recovery journeys. That is why we are helping lead the efforts in planning the first ever National Tribal Opiate Summit, which will be held in Washington State in August 2023. I want to personally invite each and every one of you to be partners with us in those efforts. The current way we're handling this issue across the country leaves people frustrated and feeling defeated. So please, again, join us. Most of the opiate funding is released as grants. Simply applying for and securing grants requires a level of staffing capacity and expertise that is challenging for many. Most harmful, though, is the grants bypass ISDIA contract support cost obligation to support and effectively administer these programs. Moving to IT modernization, many Northwest tribes have invested a significant amount of our own funds to modernize our EHR systems. These funds could have been used to address many of the other issues that we hear today talk about. For example, the Lummi Nation had spent over $1 million to upgrade our own electronic health record system. Lummi and all these other tribes should not have ever had to do this in the first place. Phase 1 of the IT modernization must pay tribes for purchased EHR systems. This is a treaty obligation. IHS appropriations should not be harmed in fiscal year 2024. This subcommittee must increase funding for IHS, including purchase and referred care, as we've heard from others. The second priority of our tribes, and nationally as well for many years, is we request support for CHAP expansion in the Portland area, as we are creating mid-level providers to serve the unmet needs in our community. And thank you for this opportunity to provide these recommendations on the IHS budget. And in honor of my ancestors and treaty promises to be friendly, and I want to extend again the invitation to join us on the National Fentanyl Summit. I did want to add another comment on the Fentanyl Summit. This is something that we cannot address through healthcare alone. We cannot treat our way out of it. And what we're seeing across the country is that we're operating in silos, and that causes the frustration that we see. We cannot incarcerate our way out of it, but we cannot also do harm reduction, as that causes public health safety concerns. And there's a lot of additional information that we're working on, and we'll get those to you. But with this national summit, we're working on housing, judicial, health, and bringing them all together so that we can work on increased funding, but also legislation that works for the communities.
Where'd you say this was going to be?
Tulalip, Washington.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you all for your testimony, and thank both of you for your tribe's works on the salmon initiative. Obviously, it's very important, and I've truly been blessed to work with all the tribes on this issue, and it's an issue we got to solve, you know, and we will. Hopefully before the salmon go extinct. But thank you all for your testimony today. I've got to be real honest with you. I don't understand the fentanyl problem. You might as well be putting strychnine on the street. And how do we get that out of kids' hands? I told somebody today, and I probably shouldn't say this because this is being recorded and all that kind of stuff, but I'm about at the point where I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to declare war on the cartels. And I'm about getting ready to say, Mr. President, go to the President of Mexico and say, we're going to take them out. Either help us or get out of our way. But I'm sick and tired of this stuff. We've got to get this crap out of this country.
Montana that could do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It is going to devastate this country. It is devastating this country.
Mr. Chairman, on that, one of the things I may add, one of the things that we're also starting to talk about is we're starting to see trank come into the communities where they're mixing other things into this, and this is something that we cannot treat. We don't have the medication to cure some of those things, and so you know, it's always something new.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of sediment that we support those. We need to be stronger on this.
I mean, it just,
how do we do it the right way?
It just makes you want to rip your hair out when a 3-year-old dies from fentanyl.
Sure.
Or a 19-month-old baby dies because they rent an Airbnb and it crawl on the yeah.
Just on a final thought before we go, it is my birthday, so if you guys can fulfill all requests, that'd be great.
No fair. I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Happy birthday, really. What I think.
Yeah.
That's all we can fulfill your request. I'm going to see to my colleague from Washington State, since is your
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess two things. First, to Chairman Peters, I'm hoping you can speak a little bit more to the problem statement about, from a mental health standpoint, the challenge of meeting growing population with diminishing resource and inadequate facility. And what are the main roadblocks to constructing a facility that actually meets the needs?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, the state of Washington is dealing with this. I mean, there's a $300 million bill right now for Western State Hospital. They're struggling with this too. So everybody's struggling with mental health and the facilities to help their people. We contend that our mental health has been compounded because of the state and federal government as well as what everyone else is dealing with. And so where we're at is we have something unique though. We have our culture. We have our salmon, we have our traditional ways that help us. That's why like our treatment center is so successful, because we infuse culture in what we do. So when we wrap our arms around our people and we drum and we sing and we go on our canoes and we're out on the water, there's nothing more healing than that. And as a collective that we've always been, when we do that, that's powerful. Where we're at in today's society is we need adequate facilities to help move that forward. And nothing's cheap these days. You can't just build something anymore. It's expensive. It is difficult. We've got the land. We've got the people. We've got the skills to do this. We need a place that is good and healthy to bring our people to where they feel safe. That's where we're at. And we'll figure out a way to make it happen. But we're asking for some help because, like I said, the federal government has failed to maintain their obligation for health care up to this point. Like I said, we've made do. We're at a point now where if we could have some help with facilities at least, that would get us going. That'd get us moving forward. We'll pick up the rest. And so that's where we're at.
Thank you. Chairman, I just also want to add, unfortunately, this is a day where I need a clone because I serve as ranking member on a subcommittee on admin that has a business meeting, so I'm going to miss the next panel of Washingtonians. But I do hope the Shoalwater get an opportunity to talk about, just as we've heard from the Quinault and the Macaw before them, the challenges of relocation and the need for resources. And I know the Puyallup is going to speak to some of the challenges in terms of school construction and some of the barriers that they've faced. Hopefully they'll get a chance to speak to that. If not, I hope one of you can ask about it, because I think these are really critical issues in our neck of the woods. And I'm sorry I can't be here to do it because my clone's not here.
I'm sure one of us will ask those
Thank you.
questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Zinke.
Jeremy, really quickly, two things. On the federal appraisal, I'm hearing that universally.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to fix it. I mean, and the government may not be the solution. We have to contract it out or have some certified appraisal because it's slowing down the process. But on forest, we're talking about tribal land.
Yes.
Your sovereign nation.
Yes.
So why in the hell is the BIA dictating whether you can? I assume
that's a good question.
It's not your first resource management on your land. So would you take the responsibility if you wanted the timber?
Yes, I mean, we've been struggling with it for a while, and I know we've heard some recommendations from the other, nearby tribes, but
the SKT in Montana manage their forests, and they do a spectacular job, so much better than the Forest Service lands, around. And I don't know if you looked at that model. Whatever that model is, they seem to be effective.
Be happy to look into that.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for testifying today. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
You bet. Last panel. Phil Rigdon, Greg Hitchcock, Annette Bryan, Charlene Nelson. You bet. You bet. Save the best for last. Charlene, I understand you have a flight, so you're going to go first. Oh, who's it? Annette? You have a flight. Okay, sorry. Okay, Annette, you've got a flight. You're going to be first.
Hoxlahale, good day, Chairman and members of the subcommittee. Sorry, Congressman Kilmer had to leave from our great state of Washington. I'm Annette Bryan, Councilwoman for the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, and this is the first time in 4 years we've been able to spend 2 days together, these historic days, having these hearings where you're listening to tribal leaders and our issues. So we want to thank you for taking your busy time to meet with tribal leaders and hear our issues. Appreciate that. The Puyallup Tribal Council is responsible for providing services to our nearly 6,000 tribal members and 25,000 plus members from approximately 355 recognized tribes who utilize our services. Today I'm going to focus on the 4 corners of our community: our healthcare programs, public safety programs, our natural resource programs, and our educational programs. Beginning with healthcare, we want to thank the committee for providing advance appropriations for the IHS for FY 2024. In the FY 2020 government shutdown, the need for this was underscored. The delays in funding had deeply felt impacts on the tribe's ability to provide health care to our people. The tribe has long been a leader in health care. We had the first 638 contract for an IHS clinic in the nation in 1976. The tribe operates a comprehensive ambulatory care program, providing care to the Native American population in all of Pierce County, Washington. Our current patient load exceeds 9,000. There are no Indian Health Service hospitals in the Portland area, so all specialties and hospital cares are paid for out of our PRC allocation. The purchase referred care allocation to PTHA remains inadequate to meet the needs of our members. We urge the committee to provide increased funding for PRC. Not the first time you've heard that in the last 2 days. A top priority for the tribe has long been public safety and justice. The lack of financial resources is a significant barrier for us to the provision of effective public safety services in Indian country. The Bureau of Indian Affairs only provides 8% of our law enforcement's program funding. And we are lucky and blessed to be able to have resources to supplement this funding, but some tribes do not. Moreover, we, like every other law enforcement agency, and you've heard about those too, and in the country are having a difficult time recruiting and retaining qualified law enforcement professionals. So we need to be able to provide adequate compensation, and we need to ensure they are properly equipped. Beyond the need to secure our people's health and safety, the tribe has treaty responsibilities to manage its natural resources for uses beneficial to the tribal membership as well as regional communities. Despite our diligent program efforts, the fisheries resource is degrading and economic losses are incurred by the native and non-native fishermen in the surrounding communities. We support the calls for increased funding for rights protection implementation funding to ensure compliance with federal court orders through effective tribal self-regulatory and co-management systems. This increase in funding would provide new monies for harvest management, habitat protection, stock enhancement, shellfish enforcement, wild fish, and other natural resource management needs. As the Aboriginal owners and guardians of our lands and waters, it's essential that adequate funding is provided to allow the tribes to carry out our inherent stewardship of these natural resources. Related to this, the tribe continues to operate a number of salmon hatcheries that benefit the fisheries of the Pacific Northwest and the Puget Sound. We want to thank the committee for its continued support of these hatchery programs. As a Puget Sound tribe, we are facing the effects of climate change and urge the committee to consider new funding to address this crisis. Finally, the tribe operates a pre-K to 12 Chief Leschi schools with an enrollment of over 600 students. I am proud to report we have increased our reading levels and our graduation rates over the last several years. However, our facility is over 30 years old and it's in serious need of maintenance and repair. In particular, the heating and cooling and ventilation systems are far past their useful life, and that fact was made clear during the pandemic. And this makes the chance of continued success difficult when the environment isn't conducive to learning. So we urge the committee to provide the necessary funding for this critical need. So on behalf of the Puyallup Tribe, I want to thank you for this opportunity to testify and respectfully remind the committee of the federal trust responsibility to the tribes. Hoyafchut, I am finished.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do either of you have any questions specifically? I was going to say.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you got to catch a flight, so we won't keep you any longer, but we thank you for your testimony.
Thank you
for
for your
being here
time.
today. You bet. Now, we're going to go to Phil Rigdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. It's an honor to come and speak before the committee. I'm Phil Rigdon. I'm Vice President of the Intertribal Timber Council. I'm an enrolled member of the Yakama Nation. Jeremy is one of my councilmen that spoke before us. I oversee Department of Natural Resources, so I could talk about some of the forestry things. But I wanted to go into, I'm representing the Intertribal Timber Council, which is a 47-year-old association of over 60 tribes that deal with natural resource and forestry issues. And we've been doing that for, and help and are part of tribes that manage more than 18.7 million acres of timberland and woodlands that are held in trust by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And that's doesn't count all the lands that we have purchased and now is fee lands too. Indian forest management creates $3 for every $1 of investment. And we've been doing that for a long time. And it employs nearly 20,000 people throughout the country, and it plays a big role. But our culture, our way of life, the habitats that provide for wildlife, the aquatic resources that provide for salmon, all these things that sustain us and have given us this place on earth are part of that. But it is also a place where the economies of Yakama, the economies of many other tribes throughout the Southwest, Midwest, and all across the country are tied to the forest management and the activities that we do. 80% of timber produced in Department of Interior is produced by tribes. When you compare to the land base, that's pretty significant when you look at what we do. And that's also, we only reach half of our annual allowable cut within Indian country because of issues that are not just funding, but it's the ability for the Bureau of Indian Affairs to get staff filled, positions filled, getting qualified people to be in the roles that they need to be to take care of those things. Right now, there's an independent team of scientists reviewing the management of tribal forest that is presented to every 10 years that is mandated by the IFMA, Indian Management. The Indian Forest Management Assessment team is doing this report, and currently they're actively finishing up that report. And this spring, we are hoping that we'll be coming out with the fourth annual report. But we do expect to see the same thing continue, where BI forestry and wildland fire preparedness continue to be far below the investment that is done for the Forest Service, BLM, and other federal agencies when you compare them. And since 2001, that gap has been only increasing due to a combination of rising federal investment in the Forest Service for forestry and wildland fire and reduce, but then also just the stagnant tribal funding. We stay at a stagnant rate, and so, but the cost to get a forester goes up, and so we can't carry the people that you do. In spite of this, tribes continue to step forward to take on, using the Tribal Forest Protection Act, to stepping out. I know in Montana, the Salish Kootenai do that with the adjacent forest. We are doing that with the Okanagan Wenatchee, and you go throughout our all of Indian country. We're out there. And I think that's an important part. We want to be part of the solution, and we're doing the leadership into that, and I think that plays a key role. Some things I think that will come out of that report that we're hoping that you'll see is continuing to invest in Indian country and Indian forestry will have the return, will help the rural communities and the economic things that are doing. But we're also the leaders in actually doing forest management that will address the forest health, the catastrophic fires that you see across the West, those things that we're on our reservations, we're dealing with that, but we're still seeing climate change. We on our reservation in 2015, similar to what the Caldwells, we had a 40,000 acre, or it was 50,000 acres, but 40,000 was on our reservation that took out a significant portion of our land. And resources were shuffled away from us, and that continues to be. And so we ask Congress to step forward and to fund us appropriately, to fund us not just there, but also make sure we're not a second-class agency when you deal with these resources, because we are the first-class folks out there doing the best work in forestry wherever you go. There are several other components that I think are really important to us, but I did want to hit on this because I do think Congress stepped forward with the wildland fire, And they invested to recognize firefighters across the nation on upping their pay and giving them the resources for the work they do. But one thing that did happen was the pay. So we 6 or 8 contract tribal. And so that means that I have tribal force, firefighters. They did not get the resources when that was done. And so I'm sending a tribal guy with all the same qualifications. He goes through all the federal qualifications that the non-tribal guy does, or the federal guy does. He got a bonus. Yeah. He got his pay increase, which is making it more troublesome for us to get the people necessary to get hired. And I think it's these things, the inequities that the tribes face, that we come here to ask for at least to make sure that gets addressed. So we have this equity within being able to pay for our firefighters. Our membership, I started my forestry as a firefighter in the early 90s. And I think it's important to recognize that that's how a lot of our tribal people, our connection to the land, our connection to who we are. And so I just ask for the Appropriations Committee especially to look at that and to make sure that there's not inequity that stands for our firefighters, because they deserve to be compensated just as the federal firefighters. And with that, you guys have our written comments. We do thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Phil.
Present.
Greg, trying to see who's next on the list.
Thank you, Chairman Simpson, Ranking Member Pingree, and distinguished members of the subcommittee for this opportunity to provide testimony on behalf of the Cowlitz Indian Tribe. Since Cowlitz federal recognition was finally confirmed in 2002, the tribe has been working to strengthen our government, engage in economic development, preserve our cultural traditions and natural resources, and protect our sovereignty. Federal funding is crucial to support these activities. First, I'd like to highlight our public safety and law enforcement needs. The Cowlitz Indian Tribe Public Safety Department operates out of 3 modular trailers on the reservation. There are currently only 14 members to patrol a large geographic service area. Our tribal police are responding to more and more calls every year for various crimes, including assault, weapons violations, vehicle theft, trespassing, and drug offenses. The tribal police currently lack office space, a detention processing area, and holding cells. Public access is limited to a 5x5 entry area, and there are no secure spaces for storing evidence, equipment, or records. We need to hire additional officers and staff, but there is no place for them. The tribal court currently operates within one of the Public Safety Department's modular buildings. The type and number of cases it can handle are limited due to the minimal space and staffing levels. Our tribal legal department, emergency management, and child welfare departments have similar restrictions. The tribe needs a consolidated public safety building to effectively provide these essential services for the safety of our members and the general public, but there is very little available funding. According to a 2018 BIA analysis, the amount needed to fund the most basic law enforcement and detention services in Indian country is $1.5 billion. The funding made available in annual appropriations is nowhere near this estimated need, which only continues to grow. A substantial increase for BIA and tribal law enforcement, including facilities, is desperately needed to address the public safety needs in Indian country. And of course, we urge additional attention and funding to address the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women, an issue that has not left Cowlitz untouched. A related concern is the need for transportation infrastructure funding, which is crucial to support our public safety functions. BIA's roads funding has been grossly inadequate for years, as evidenced by the poor condition of roads in Indian country. The funding that Cowlitz receives barely makes a dent in the 60 miles of roads that we must maintain, and additional funding is needed for new roads and infrastructure. We ask that FY24 appropriations include more funding for the BIA Tribal Transportation Program. This funding is essential to support tribal public safety and economic growth. Next, I will address the need for the federal investment in tribal health care. The Cowlitz Indian Tribe provides state-of-the-art drug treatment services through its 4 healthcare clinics. The tribe generously makes these services available to anyone who needs them, native or non-native.
Our clinics serve thousands of patients every year. Drug treatment provided by licensed caring professionals is among our most important resources to mitigate the impacts of the current opioid epidemic. Additional federal funding is needed to expand delivery and increase access to these services, providing culturally appropriate addiction treatment is particularly important for the large number of American Indians and Alaska Natives served by the Cowlitz clinics. Cowlitz is grateful to have received some grant funding to supplement funding from IHS, but the need still far exceeds available resources. Finally, increased funding is needed to address the significant challenges that tribal communities face in response to climate change. Wildfires in the Pacific Northwest have had a profound impact on our traditional lands and associated cultural and natural resources. Warming temperatures, rising sea levels, and changing hydrology of the Columbia River Basin threaten the very existence of salmon and other wildlife indispensable to the Cowlitz people. Not only do we face fundamental changes to our traditional way of life, but real threats to the ability to live in our historic lands. In 2020, FEMA ranked our namesake county, Cowlitz County, as most at risk for coastal flooding. Funding for salmon recovery and habitat restoration is urgently needed to address the salmon extinction crisis, as well as the interrelated climate crisis in the Columbia River Basin. For these reasons, we ask that you increase funding for tribal climate change response and mitigation. Nwaks, and thank you for your time today. Your attention to these issues will have a positive impact on Indian country and the lives of Native American people. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Greg. Charlene,
Okay, I would write.
is your mic on? Is your mic on?
How about now?
There you go.
Okay, got it. Mr. Simpson, would it be possible that my treasurer might come up here and our treasurer of our nation, because he might be able to answer some questions better about what I'm going to say about money. Sure. Quentin, would you please come up? First, I'd like to say Masi to each one of you for being here and listening to us, and I'm sure you're tired and you're still hanging on there, so I really think that's wonderful. My name is Charlene Nelson, and I am the chairwoman of the Shoalwater Bay Indian Tribe, which is located 2,800 miles west by northwest of Washington, D.C. We are the beautiful north shore of Willapa Bay, facing out into the Pacific Ocean, our mother. As the chairwoman of the tribe, I have learned firsthand the vibrant and successful tribal communities are not possible without first attending to the health of our community members and our environment. And we've worked on our community members. We have a wonderful group that helps take care of them. The environment is something we try to keep care of, but the environment also takes care of itself, which sometimes can cause problems because the ocean is rising. And for us, it is danger in rising. The climate. We all like rain. That's no problem. At Shoalwater, all of our housing and government buildings are just 15 feet above sea level. And I think that might be even less now. And the protective embankment built by the Army Corps of Engineers is repeatedly washing away. But I thank them because they have been so wonderful. We would have had no protection if they had not started last spring when she went down, way down. Climate change has sped this up and increased the risk that a single tsunami could even decimate our entire community and what defines us as Shoalwater people. And many people who have been at this table and told you stories are telling you something that is very important. All tribes are survivors, and they carry history for thousands of years. We want to protect not only our tribe, but all tribes. We're all survivors. We need to move to higher ground, and we've been working on this. We have purchased 1,200 acres of land at 250 feet above sea level. That's right in back of us. But the land is raw, without any infrastructure to speak of. We need assistance to develop it, and we need it immediately. What we have right now is people working on roads that are paved. We have dirt roads, but you can't take the heavy equipment that we need to take up there to build the houses, to take up the pipes for the water, which we need, pipes for the water. There's not much infrastructure up there at all right now. But what we want to do is put it up safely, so it's safe for the people. We want to put in a wastewater system that isn't going to contaminate any land. That's our job. I mean, that's everybody's job. Don't contaminate. We need federal funding for additional land acquisition, for developing roads and utilities, 3 essential government buildings, and 80 homes. In total, we believe the project would cost approximately $120 million. This breaks down to $70 million for roads and utilities, $17 million for government buildings, and $35 million for homes. We need help from Congress to help save our people. Remember, all tribes are survivors, not just in terms, there goes the eye that's partially blind, in terms of appropriations, but also ways to streamline these appropriations so they can be put to use efficiently and as intended. Because what do each of you know and what do I know? We're not the only one that has this problem. I've been to meetings and I've heard the stories of people in Alaska, and I know people along our tribes along the Washington coast. This is something that needs to be dealt with before it's too late. Because if it becomes too late, history's gone. And possibly our people. This is not just our story. Tribal nations throughout the Pacific Northwest and elsewhere are experiencing similar dire environmental challenges, including flooding, erosion, ocean acidification, increased wildfires, extended drought, changes in season, and other habitat degradation that has put our communities and our ways of life in jeopardy. Tribal communities have managed these lands for thousands of years. The decision to relocate is a difficult one, driven by the most urgent need. I respectfully urge this subcommittee to support assistance for Shoalwater Bay's relocation efforts before it is too late. And if you have questions about money, I have the person that can answer them.
This is the Appropriations Committee. We always have questions on money. I thank you all for your testimony and look forward to working with you as we try to address it. As you know, after 2 days of testimony, almost all of the issues have been brought up by one tribe or another, and we've asked a lot of questions about it. Of course, the Washington tribes in the Puget Sound area and stuff are the first ones to bring up the issues of the rising sea levels and moving their villages up to higher ground and the cost that that's going to incur and stuff. But the contract or the healthcare costs and advanced appropriations and law enforcement and the challenges it faces across, you know, if a tribe didn't bring it up, that doesn't mean it's not a problem on that reservation. But many of the tribes brought up the issue with law enforcement, and we could go through them, but what you've given us over these 2 days is a broad overview of what's happening in Indian country in America. And that informs our decision, and hopefully informs what we can do and the priority that we put on those things as we put this bill together. And it also encourages us to get out and visit you on your reservations, because it's not just good enough that you come here. We need to get out and see you in your country.
Please do. We'll take you up to higher ground. I'm not driving, no. But no, so that you can see what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That would be good. That
You
would be
said that
wonderful.
everybody loves rain. You know,
Of
I
course.
come from the desert. Anyway, I thank you for your testimony. What?
If I could, I'd just like to pass on this infographic that shows, it kind of puts into perspective how much land we've lost over the last 100+ years.
We'll put that in the record.
Thank you.
And you can show this one.
Thank you, and we'll get that.
Okay.
Mr. Pingree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for holding the hearings today. And I agree, we've had a chance to hear an awful lot of interesting testimony, so we probably don't have as many questions as we did early in the day. I was going to ask you one quick follow-up. When you're talking about the BIA forestry, you're talking about a division at the BIA that deals with forestry issues, not the Forest Service and a relationship that you have with them. I just want to make sure I understand how this works.
It is the Division of Forestry within the BI Trust Service.
Got it. And that's where all those problems that you dealt with.
The inadequate staffing.
Yeah, we really
and all
need
of
to
those things.
work on that. And very interesting to read about your tribe and see how long it took you to actually get your land back. So thank goodness
Yeah,
you're
thank
back there again. And just on the relocation, how many members are there of your tribe?
Is it?
Like 470, I believe.
Okay, got it. Well, I hope we can assist in your move. Thank you so much for that.
And one thing I think, every life is valuable. You can't say it's only 2,000 or we don't do anything, but every life is not to give away, but to take care of. And that's in my heart.
I don't know if it's a parallel, but I live in a town of 417 people, and we keep track of when there's 418 and when there's 416, so matters quite a bit.
When
to
is
us.
coming.
Yeah, and one's on the way.
Thank you, Ms. Pingree. Mr. Zinke. Thank all of you, and this concludes our 2 days of hearing on tribal issues. And as I said, it's very important to this committee that we hear from you, and we will be in touch with you. And as I said, we're gonna get out and do a few trips out in the country. When I was chairman before, it was the first time that this committee had ever gone out, recent history that anybody could remember, out on the reservations and talk to you out there, and it was eye-opening to many of us. So appreciate it. Thank you, and this concludes our hearing. This meeting is adjourned.